son a map. We left Vegas, and I said, we need to go here, here, and here. And I just said, no interstates, just highways and country roads, all the way to Buena Vista, Colorado. So it was a long way. And I gave him a Rand McNally. He's never seen a Rand McNally. But he was a navigator, no technology at all. And he did an excellent job. But we were going through this place in Arizona, and we're just balling through it at 100 miles an hour, just on some highway in the middle of nowhere. And off to my right, I just see like really quick, like a whole bunch of flags, like America, like in the middle of the desert, like just middle of the desert, and a whole bunch of these flags. And I'm like, wow, you see that, Quiller? And my son's Quiller, and we just kept on driving. And then I know in the picture there was flags that had fallen down in my mind, because there's hundreds of these flags. And I was like, oh man, I can't. It's like, turn the car around, drive back, and my son and I park, and it's a Navajo war memorial, war veterans graveyard. And somebody had taken the time to put an American flag on every single grave. And there were hundreds of graves all the way back to the Korean War, World War II. So we spent a good couple hours walking around this rattlesnake pit, fixing American flags and putting them back up and zip tying them and using baling wire. And throughout that
50
whole
cord?
process, whatever we could find. Yeah, like whatever we could find on the ground. A lot of baling wire by hand. We wanted a rental car. I don't have anything. And but the whole time, my son just kept asking questions. He's like, "Where's that? What is that? Like, this is this guy. Like, it might be a Navy chief from the Korean War or Vietnam or somebody. And what's a chief? And then I talk about a chief, a Navy chief, not an Indian chief, but a Navy chief. And we're talking about that's what like an E6 or E7 and above. And these people are really honored by Americans in general, then deeper by the Navajo people who add huge value to our own country, even though they probably could kind of have a grudge against us. I mean, there's a lot of really...
They have good reason not to serve in their country.
Yeah, a lot of amazing conversation about that we were able to experience just by taking that break and putting the...
Dory 1, this is Fire Team Delta. Dad's coming home.
Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast.
Welcome to episode 42 of the Military Veteran Dad Podcast. It's almost hard to believe that I just said the number 42, because when I started this, I wanted to say I would be at 42, but deep down, I probably thought I would quit. But here at 42, I can say I haven't quit. If anything, I'm more committed than I was even at episode 1. And it's because of the stories that I hear from you, the dads. I realize the impact that you're having from hearing these stories and the episodes that we're sharing, that just renews it even more, that I'm going to be 10 times more committed than I am at 42 at episode 100, and my ability to bring you more value day in and week out is only going to get better, and I am in for the long haul here. So at episode 42, I just want to say thank you and know that I'm not going anywhere, and we are going all the way, and we're going to do some big things. This week's episode is with Greg Boudah. 2 weeks after graduating high school in 1993, he was standing on the yellow footprints at MCRD San Diego. Shortly thereafter, he was assigned to the 3rd Light Armored Battalion, then Marine Security Guard Battalion, and finally Alpha 1-4 doing forward observer work. In 2003, the artillery battery he was with was deployed to Iraq for OIF-1. He was promoted to staff sergeant while he was in country, and later separated from the Corps honorably. During his service, he met his Irish wife, earned a bachelor's degree, and caught an unrelenting travel bug. He started working in the jewelry field after active duty and found it to be very interesting. He worked for 3 companies, learned from the best and the worst, before he started his own. He has a house in Colorado, yet he has called Thailand home since 2006, where he owns 2 companies. He has a wonderful 8-year-old redheaded boy who's currently very interested in making knives and swords. And today's episode with Greg has got a big, wild amount of stories. and wisdom and depth, and I know you're going to love it. So without further ado, let's get started with Greg Boudah. Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thank you very much. I'm super happy to be here.
Do you remember when we first met, the first time we met each other in face-to-face?
Oh, I remember it was in Orlando. The details remind me.
So I knew who you were because I had seen you in a couple other podcasts. So you're kind of like one of the very first, I don't think you were consider yourself a celebrity, but to me, you were a celebrity because I was just entering this space. And I had just kind of gotten there. I hadn't said hello to anybody really that I knew or was connected with. And we were at the coffee shop and Steve Kuhn walks up and you were kind of either hanging with him or you came over to say hello to him. And I knew you. And I was like, okay, I'm going to kind of just work my way in there. And I remember that moment. I was giving you a whole bunch of podcasts to listen to, and that was like the very first moment that I knew you. And then our friendship has kind of evolved. And then we met again at this last military influencer conference, and I feel like I might have weirded you out with that first hug, though. Did I?
No, but I do remember our meeting. It's a matter of like, because I just had done the same thing to Kuhn. Like I had just like moments before you had creeped up on him in a conversation with somebody else. So I was like, hey man, I was going to kind of slide in here and like, oh, hi. And you know, he was very gracious, of course. And I'm sure I was probably shaking very great. Like we're just such a nice community of us. That's the great thing about our military influencers conference that we met at was all the BS of trade shows. If you've ever been to a trade show unrelated to military, it's like there's like everybody's a total stranger. Where we may in fact be strangers, but that thread cuts a lot of the mess out of the way, and you go right to it.
Yeah. When I gave you a hug in DC afterwards, I was like, I don't think I should just start hugging people for the first time.
I'm a hugger too, man. It's good.
Perfect, because when I hugged you, I was like, I think I might have just weirded him out. So I'm super glad that I didn't weird you out.
No, not at all, man. I'm always, whenever I hug people or get hugged, especially anybody, I'm always wondering, do they smell my beard oil? Because I wear all kinds of different beard oils on.
No, I don't have a memory of your beard oil.
Good, thank God.
That's good. Have you had people compliment you on your beard oil? Like, wow, that was a good scent.
Exclusively like our female military vets would say, oh, it's a nice beard oil, because their husbands might have something or something. So I always give a little shout out. I only buy our military beard products, actually.
Well, go ahead and unpack a little bit, Greg, about your family and actually a little bit of how you ended up where you are right now.
Okay, so my immediate family, my wife and my son. If you want to kind of go back in time, I absolutely cool with that. It's your call.
Let's start with your family, and then we'll unpack a little bit more about going in the backwards.
Okay, so my wife is from Ireland, and her and I met in 1997 when I was a Marine embassy guard in Tanzania. So like my first post from 29 Palms, so I'm a former Marine like yourself. My first post from 29 Palms to get out of 29 Palms after 3 or 4 years in 29, I got on an embassy guard program, and my first post was Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. So I met my girlfriend, now my wife, at the Irish Ambassador House of Tanzania at the St. Patrick's Day party. Like it's about as cliche as you can kind of get to meet your Irish to be wife. So we met then. We just hit it off right off the bat, and I went to different embassies. I went to Geneva, then to Dublin, and then back to Africa after Osama bin Laden blew up our embassies. You may remember that in 1998, embassy in Tanzania and the embassy in Kenya popped. And I went right back to Tanzania because I was only recently out of there, and I spoke Swahili pretty well, and I knew everything about the area. So my CEO called me, and I was on a plane for most of that, a good chunk of that summer, man, probably, a good few months. And then back to Dublin, and then I EAS'd Alpha Active Duty out of Dublin, and I joined the reserves and spent another several years in the reserves. My girlfriend at the time, Emma, she stayed in college. She went back to Ireland and finished her degree, and then immigrated to the United States. And we bought a home in Denver and started getting our stuff together. I'm still doing reserve. Iraq kicks off, and I spent in 2003. I was in the initial push. My unit, that's a whole nother side conversation of what I was a Fort observer at this point for an artillery battery in Colorado. and our unit got redesignated. That's another story, which we can talk about later. But I did the Iraq thing, came back, and I said, okay, I gave the Marine Corps plenty of opportunities to kill me after about 11 years. And then basically got hired really quickly by a jewelry company that I was already working for in the reserves. A jewelry company asked me to come start a company for them overseas. So I did. I didn't know how to do that. Actually, I got fired. I'm sorry. I got fired. And about a week after I got fired, one of my vendors called me and said, a vendor from Belgium, the diamond company, they called me and said, okay, we want to hire you. We need you to come over here, over to Thailand, actually, via Belgium, kind of complicated. But we need you to come start a company for us. And I was like, sure. Okay, Ben, I had absolutely fucking no. Can we swear in this podcast?
It's fine.
Okay, I had absolutely no idea how to start a company overseas, no idea. However, I did certainly understand that I needed to find where the money was, because I had a home, I had debt, I had a mortgage, I had a family, just me and Emma. So
you had the American dream.
Well, yeah.
American curse.
Yeah. So I needed to go where the money was, wherever the job was. And that was my first or second or third opportunity in a week that it was called on. That one was a good one. I was like, okay. So I jumped on it. Fast forward a few years, and I was I started a company, built a company, and then another guy, a guy named Tom Shane. He's a big American jeweler in the Midwest and West. He called me. He built a big factory here and asked me to be the CEO of that company. I did. I ran that company for a long time, and that's when my wife and I, after like 10 years probably of being together, we decided, okay, let's drop the pill and plan a family. Right? We cleared all the debt. We got our stuff organized. We felt like we 8 months savings plan. We did this big Susie Orman thing, and it really worked. When you get out of debt, this is a sidebar. When you get out of debt and you build a reserve, I highly recommend, as you're talking to your transitioning military folk, is if you have a reserve of cash 8 or 9 months, it is like $1 million off of your back. You're like, I don't care if I get fired, I quit, whatever, I'm good. Like, it's this huge safety net, as long as you don't maintain debt, an unreasonable amount of debt. I mean, a couple $1,000s is whatever, but I mean, like an unreasonable amount of debt, which is sort of the American typical situation.
Yep.
Not just the American, I mean, the global typical situation. So, like, literally, after many years of him being on the pill, stop the pill, whammo, man, like, bam, pregnant. Like half an hour, we got like his baby on the docket. So my son was born in 2010, and so he's just a little 9-year-old kid. And he was born. All my wife's a fan of redheads, so I was in the delivery room, and he's coming out, and I'm like, he's a ginger. He's like, yeah. We knew it was a boy, but we obviously don't know if he's a redhead.
So you waited to find out what sex it was? No,
we knew it was a boy. We obviously don't know, 3 arms and whatever. But he was good to go, and he came out and it was good. So he was born here. We live between Bangkok, Thailand, and we're in and out of Denver and Dublin, Ireland, quite a bit. So we kind of move around. I would say home is pretty much mostly Thailand, because I do have a factory here where we manufacture jewelry for high-end American brands and European brands, and we make their jewelry. We've been doing that since about 2011. We started our own company, and then that's been going well for years. I mean, going through the issues of raising a family here, starting a business here, running other people's businesses, and then saying, forget it, I'm going to do my own business in a foreign country where there's a lot of weird regulations and there's a lot of atypical barriers that are harder to even understand, A, because it's in a different language, and B, logically, it doesn't make sense, some of the protocols that you have to have in place. And the cost to start a company over here in this country, the barrier is very difficult. Immigration is very difficult. These folks know immigration. Where in the United States, we're kind of loosey-goosey. Where these do, every 90 days I check in. Every year I renew my visa by face-to-face. And when I say every 90 days I check in, literally I have to go physically check in with my family and say, I'm here.
Might as well be a parole officer.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot more complications, but they know where we are, us foreigners are in their country. It's it's a little too heavy-handed, but they know where we are. So all together, I got my wife, my son, and I, a little small unit, and that's just probably we're not going to have any more kids. That's plenty for us, and I love him to death. He's a good boy, and I got blessed. I just got lucky and got my wife's just solid. She's just a good, smart, added value to me. She's my partner in the business, and she's my guide in many ways. She's my macro. I'm in the weeds micromanager sometimes. She kind of slows me down when she needs to, when I need it. So we have a good little team.
Let's rewind a bit, a little back to the first moment of being a dad. When you held your son for the first time, what thoughts were going through your head?
Great question. I literally told him that I will not have him experience the abuse that I went through. I promised him that. Because it's getting a little personal. I'll share with you. Like my biological father died when I was 3. He's a police officer in Phoenix and drowned on a scuba trip to Mexico, just like with his buddies. And he went down to Rocky Point, Mexico, and drowned in 1978. So my mother, who had my sister and I, my sister's 3 years older than me, suddenly widowed. And she couldn't have been, I haven't done the numbers, but she's probably 25. And boom, a widow with 2 kids and now a pension and a widower. So throughout, between then and, joining the Marine Corps, it was how she dealt with us is very heavy-handed. She married another guy, and he was a Navy guy, and he abused us really hard. A lot of physical abuse, a lot of mental abuse, a lot of violence, a lot of weird stuff, like stuff that she shouldn't do to kids, man. Like, really, like I don't know, man. Like my kid, I just say, hey, stop that, bro, back, and he just stops. You're like, okay, like I don't need to like take out a 2-meter board that's an inch thick and beat the dog shit out of it. Just not necessary. I couldn't imagine hurting him. Like sometimes as a dad, you hurt their feelings and you're like, oh God, it crushes you. You're like, fuck, really? Yeah. I couldn't imagine
going that far. Yeah.
Yeah. One time the dead finger. Are you familiar with the dead finger?
I don't think so.
Well, it's like a flick, like a flick.
Yeah.
One time my son must have been like 5 or something. And out of a patience thing, I was like impatient on something, and he did something. I flicked him like right in the chest. And when a 40-year-old man flicks a 5-year-old, it probably stings a lot more than we can appreciate. And holy crap, I still feel bad about that. Like he doesn't even remember it, but I sure as hell remember it. I said, I don't know how my mother and my stepfather could beat the crap out of us for so many years. So that to answer your question, when I held him, I committed to giving him a completely different life. And that's how it's been.
Before becoming a dad, did you have to work through the fear of repeating the mistakes? Like,
I was reluctant.
Did you have a fear of like, what if I end up being like them?
I was reluctant. I felt like I didn't think I was going to be a hitter. I didn't think I needed to. I wasn't worried about that, but it's the psychological stuff. That's hard not to do. Like in the Marines, we call them the fuck games and the head games and all that stuff. Like that's kind of like built in. And then the Marine Corps just reinforces it and helps you get better at it. Right. Yeah. So, which I'm not complaining about.
It's part of the standing operating procedure.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not complaining. I enjoyed every minute of the Marine Corps pretty much. I mean, I really enjoyed my time, but what I do think a lot of times is like I remember boot camp. You remember like the drill instructor, like they dump all the stuff and everybody be kind of like in panic mode and they were in like the head
ripping stuff apart. Yeah.
Like I was totally comfortable with that. Like literally when I was 5, 6, 7, 9, my mother would wake up and open our drawers at like 1 a.m. and just dump them and vacuum your room and make you unfold all your stuff. It was really messy, weird. So like I was really like I think mentally prepared.
You were living boot camp for 15 years.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, like I was.
This is all you got?
Yeah, it's like fine. I was like, now mindset later on in life, I realized, the guys who were from like a normal family, that must have been like horrific. Like I'm always like, who cares? I'm terrible. I mean, I like to run. I like to do push-ups. No big deal. But like, I was like the head games must have been really heavy on people who come from loving normal family.
And for me, I never really had a lot of adversity in my life. So when I went to boot camp, it was a shock, but emotionally, I was always more, what got me was the people that almost had a chip on their shoulder, or they went in with an edge of anger. And I was always bullied in high school and never really worked through all those feelings. And a lot of that just kind of suppressed it. And I don't think I've ever told this on the podcast, but it kind of all hit me hard. We were up north at Camp Pendleton, and I don't remember what triggered it, but there was just a moment where it was just like all circulating down, and we were outside eating MRE for our meal. And I just started crying. I lost focus of what they were saying, and then I got us in trouble. And then it was probably the only time I cried in boot camp was outside eating this MRE, where it was just emotionally, I was just feeling overwhelmed and not accepted. And that was kind of like a pivot point, because in what's the leader of the platoon? It's not the squad leaders, but the guide kind of like stepped in, and he really mentored and said like, this isn't how a family treats someone. So like that really was a pivot point that allowed me to feel like I could belong. But before that, I just never felt like this was me. And it was probably just part of the growth that I had to go through, because I was 2 weeks away from joining the Air Force, and the Marine recruiter had a bouncy house at our church picnic. And my mom wanted me to make sure I was exploring all my options. So she talks to him first. I talked to him next, talking to him in high school 2 days later. And then 2 weeks later, I'm raising my right hand for the Marine Corps. So for me, it was really a dare to be great moment. And I was the least likely voted guy to go to the Marine Corps probably. And I did it. Awesome. So I was always up against this. Maybe I didn't feel like I was supposed to be there, but by the end of my 4 years, I definitely felt like I was supposed to be there. It was just, this was the challenge that I needed for that moment, and to kind of break down those barriers. But
that's awesome.
Boot camp was really hard for me in a lot of different ways. But it all accumulates at the end there when you graduate, and all of the misery that you gain throughout it goes away, and it's all worth it in the end.
Well, that's awesome, man. I mean, I'm glad you took that challenge. Well, how great is that? I mean, because you're such a nice guy and you're contributing so much. And a lot of that is because of that damn bouncy castle.
Yeah, exactly. It's great. It was really like a complete 90-degree turn. And I had crossed the Marines off because I thought they were just a bunch of grunts, and I knew I didn't want to be a grunt. And then I started talking to Marine, and he was the number one recruiter in Wisconsin 3 years in a row. So the odds were against me from the moment I said hello.
Yeah.
But it was just, I wanted the easy way with the Air Force, but then choosing the harder path, which I've never really done in my entire life, was really something that kind of, I took a break after the Marine Corps because I got lost. But it's now with this podcast, I'm continuing to choose that harder path of trying to figure out more, push myself, push my physical limits to pass my mental limits. Did you feel when you joined the military that you joined to gain an identity as a man? Like that was where you wanted to go to the school of being a man, or what that definition was like? Did you have any doubts in that area?
I didn't. Good question. I've never put any thought to that exact notion of gain and identity under those terms. I definitely identified with what I saw in the posters of what I wanted to be. Like that's when like the poster of like, this recon dude coming out of the water, like he's got his K-bar upside down, his M16's coming out of the water. I was like, oh yeah, I'm totally gonna be that guy.
And that was when they had the guys climbing the mountains out in like Utah and turning into a Marine on top type commercials.
I think that was actually pre that.
Pre that?
I think we were pretty much 90. I joined in 93. I graduated with Beverly Hills.
Oh yeah, you were definitely then. Wait though, yeah. I got my
But we had such good marketing. But I didn't overtly go to find identity. I went for what I thought what a man would be. Maybe that's the right way to put it, but that's what a man was. I mean, I watched every John Wayne movie and every Clint Eastwood movie and every war movie, and that just resonated with me, especially with that aggro situation I had and sort of an unruly thing. I thrive under control. I was like this close to being like a model prisoner or this way. And like everything in my life and everything I was told was going down that way. Literally told that. And I kind of had a sense that that's where I was going. I mean, but I really didn't do any crime. I was like, I was a varsity soccer player as a freshman and that moved. But
well, I'm sure growing up, crying got you beat. So you were just conditioned mentally to hold that in.
Yeah.
Like you just never gave yourself permission because that got you in trouble. So you just never created pathways in your brain to probably just process raw emotion like that all the time, because it would get your dad frustrated. And if that was something that triggered him, then make him uncomfortable, then you just...
Oh, they just kicked me out all the time. Like I literally, in my sophomore year in high school, I lived in my backyard in a tent for like 8 months. They wouldn't let me in the house. And just because I did argue, but I still don't like, I'm a horrible employee.
Yeah. You don't consider that with your son when he starts arguing with you? That like you're going to go out
but I will. When he starts pushing, I'm trying to find this balance. I will find what I am now is I'm consciously aware of this breaking point because of my macro partner, who she did leave the room. My macro partner, Emma, is what I saw my stepdad do to his boys is he broke the spirit. Like he just totally broke their spirit. So I think you got to find a balance and keep the spirit, but just instill vision and discipline. You can't break them. You can't make them like just slugs who are just going to line up. And I mean, my brother did not do that, but you must keep their fighting spirit, their drive, and not force them to maintain a safety net. And so that's the trick I got to work out with my son as he grows up. Right now, he's pretty malleable. Like he doesn't push back too much.
Yeah. Well, I've heard a statistic like by the age of like 7, 60 or 70% of their personality is determined.
Yeah.
So you're on I'm sure the teens is just naturally rebellion, but a lot of who he is today is just going to come out when he's on the other side of pushing back on life.
Yeah. I always ask myself and I always wonder if I feel like I'm a pretty decent dad for a young boy, but will I be a good dad when he's a teen? So I ask other dads that question. Like I started a dad's Facebook group in my town. It's called Bangkok Dad's Headquarters. And it's just dads who need to talk about stuff. And just, it could be anything from business to community to activities to parenting. And we just throw 2 cents at each other and sound off without spouses involved. It's a good little thing. And that's something we were recently talking about is like, are you a better dad raising a young boy or young kids, or a better dad as older kids, teenagers, and because we've got dads of all levels in our group. And it's a really interesting thought that I'm aware of now. And that's at least I'm aware of it, that as he gets older, you're aware of the concern and you can kind of map it out.
Being in Thailand, you might appreciate this Kaloyism. I often equate to when you become aware of something, it's like someone snapped their fingers and an elephant just appeared in your foresight. This elephant was always there. You just couldn't see it. And then the more awareness you become, you essentially get surrounded by a herd of elephants, and they're ginormously and massive, and you can't just push them. You have to deal with them and almost work through them. And that's when they go away. But lots of times I remember when I just first started self-help stuff, like I was just overwhelmed because I was being aware of a lot of stuff, but then you're surrounded by elephants, and then you're overwhelmed because like these elephants didn't used to be there, but now they are. It's like, now I can't even see straight anymore. And that can also be overwhelming as dads when you start learning all these interesting things that makes it like, or the first time you wake up and be like, wow, this kid's life really is on me. I better not mess this up. Like that itself is an elephant. Like, oh man, how do I do that? How do I mess with that?
Oh yeah, that was my first, that very thought was, I didn't really even get it, that, this is, this is it. Like, this is your responsibility, until like the next day after my son was born. Just, your kid's kind of like euphoric and kind of high and just happy go lucky. And then we're washing, the nurse is teaching us how to wash him in the sink, like at the sink at the hospital. And then she's talking about having ears, how you learn how to wash a baby. And at that moment, I was like, oh, he's coming home. Well, like, you knew it, but you didn't know it. And you're like, oh, this is my mind.
Yeah, this bag of molecules that's somehow crying at me is now it's coming home with us, and it's gonna need to be something
it
to
can't
it.
wash itself.
Yeah, it can't do anything by itself.
It sounds so stupid, but that kind of hits you as a new dad. You're like, oh.
And you didn't. I mean, you're primarily focused on your wife when she's pregnant, and you deal with it. Okay, you're going to be a dad, but you're like, I feel like a mom is working through that entire 9-month period because they're building an intimate bond already with that child before they even meet it.
Yeah.
Dads, there's literally, we're just kind of hanging out, and
we're maintaining the nest is what I think we're doing. Just let her remain comfortable. No stress.
Keeping the nesting at bay, keeping her stress list at bay, doing whatever she needs to keep things organized. But you don't really ever process that thought. Sometimes maybe in the ultrasound, but it's so quick during the ultrasound that you don't really it doesn't really sink in. And there was something for our first 2 kids, we found out what the sex was during the ultrasound, but the last one, we had one of everything. So we had 2, boy and a girl first. And I didn't realize it, but when you rob yourself of the emotion of finding out when they're born, like, it's like a bomb of emotions, because you're excited that, oh my gosh, it's a girl or a boy. You're excited because you've just seen your baby, but at the same time that you're going through that, you're holding someone that you created. Like, going back, I probably would have waited for all 3, because I only cried for my last one because it was just so overwhelmingly at the same time. You're finding out all those different things. So
nice, man.
It's a big one to wrap your head around. When you and I think the part where you're talking about trying to figure out, are you a good dad? Are you going to be a good teen? I think when I think of my son and when I think of what he's going to need or what my daughters are going to need, honestly, I think the one thing that messes teens up the most is they don't have a safe place to talk about what's going on in their head. So as adults, we already have this, we have an inner voice, and it's usually this monkey brain saying a lot of horrible things that aren't actually true. And as a teenager, I think this voice is the first time they truly get introduced that this is something that's there, and life is happening, and they have third world problems, but these are first world problems for them at the same time, that they're super important. And it doesn't matter whether you consider it stupid. I mean, it's life or death that someone doesn't like them. And not having a safe place to come talk to you about that. And I've heard it said that, like, always listen to your kids when they're younger on the small, silly things, so that later in life they come to you with the big things. And I think that's just one of the core things that I think, or that at least what I'm prepping for, is just going to bed at night. School's back in, so we're in kind of a good routine. I just do bedtime talk. I want them to be able to talk about their day, and we talk about nonsense of nothingness. But I want them just to feel comfortable that they can talk to me. And last year, my daughter was having problems at school, and there was a great book called Someday a Bird Will Poop on You. And it's essentially just that at some point, no matter how good of a day you're having, a bird will poop on you. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. And so we call this bird poop talk. So we would talk about the people that pooped on her during the day, that just came into her life and just pooped on her, and how to deal with it and work through it and try different things and what it felt like, what emotions, giving them emotions, labels. I feel like that's just some of the simplest things we can do to prepare them as teens, because there's just a lot of raw emotion being a teenager. And if you don't have someone that you trust to talk to, you just internalize it and you feel broken. I think that's what a lot of teenagers do. And I think that's what triggers a lot of teen suicide, is that they internally recognize that they're broken because they can't make sense of what they're feeling. And then monkey brain takes over.
Suicide, I mean, on the bell curve, I mean, it's the let's just say we hope it's the extreme. It must be the extreme. But I would say, like, most of the kids out, I don't know most, whatever. But I mean, just like in my case, it was just like constantly, lots of just being upset and depressed and not like there was no safe place. When I moved into the foster home, the guy who ran it was a former Vietnam Marine named Tommy Gahan. Just a toughest old guy. It's like in his 60s or 70s. Like, and I loved him dearly. He went to my boot camp graduation, and he like that much of an important man to me. And he'd as much as hug you as he'd pick you up and slam you against the wall for back talk. Mm-hmm. And but he didn't come from a place of aggression. He came from a place of, this is not how you behave.
Yeah.
But our home, he always would come, like would hold you and say, he would hold you as a boy. I was held by him many times. Very emotional time in my life. And Tommy would just hold you and say, I love you. This is your home. And he had major pride in his home. We didn't treat the home with disrespect. We didn't curse in the house. And he had 9 boys, all parolees. I was the only non-parolee. It was such a loving household. It was unbelievable. I mean, it's just an unbelievable thing. In the house, the home, his home, which started in a trailer when I first moved in. We lived in a trailer with no running plumbing. Like, we shit in a bag was sort of a joke, but we shat in a bag. Like, that was the thing.
You were just prepping for Iraq.
Yeah, absolutely. Someday offline, I'll tell you the story about leaving Iraq and the lamb dinner from Kuwait that we ate. My whole battery.
Next MIC.
Yeah. But anyway, so and then we moved into a house. The state of Nevada managed to get him a big house, like a old farmhouse in the middle of Fallon, Nevada, which is where I graduated high school, the big Naval Air Station over there, which is where my stepfather was stationed at that time. But
what I liked about what you said there is the hugging, and so much of masculine society today, almost like the fact that I hugged you isn't something that most people think about. But just in general for boys, like, they need to feel their father's love, and they need to, like, I'll be reading a book to my son and he'll get snugly under my arm, and like they need that. And that's so important to feel that, just because when you go out into the world as a man to try to create your own life, you need to know that you had those deposits and that confidence. Because I think that's where a lot of confidence comes from, is that just that, like, men don't naturally love themselves, I think, as they grow up, and they need someone that kind of breathes in and validates that. And I think that's what you can do through love. And for you, where you had the gap of where, like, I don't know, maybe a gap, but where you had to kind of a switch you had to make of, like, this isn't the behavior. Like, he had a double-edged sword. He had to replace what you didn't get for most of your life. Mm-hmm. At the same time, set a different example. And it reminded me of an odd story, not odd, but disconnected a little bit, but no one really knows about it. At Columbine, so it was that first high school shooting that we had in like 1998. But the story of Columbine that nobody knows about is the principal was at the high school at that time. I mean, this is pretty much the worst day for any principal ever, that when you have that. And he was like the very first one. He took it upon himself to walk every kid through all the way to the end of their senior year that was in the school system when that shooting happened. And wow. he went in with a message, like, every first day of school, they all linked a lock together, and it was a big giant chain that they made. And it was a symbolized, like, we are all in this together. If one of these chains breaks, we are no longer whole. And if we don't work on this together as a single chain, essentially they all knew what would happen, but we do it together and we lift people up. Like, he literally turned that school around. And when I've heard the story about what this guy did, I mean, he literally transformed that school into a place of hope and love and community from the worst tragedy that America had ever seen in high school at that point. And I think that's a little bit like what that mentor was doing there. He was kind of re-bringing you guys back together, that this is how you act as a team and as a unit, and probably gave you some of the very first default Marine Corps programming that you took into camp.
Yeah, it was great. We literally raked the rocks because we didn't have any grass.
I hated raking rocks. That was the most, we talk about mind games. That one was just like, why?
No, man, they pile up. You got to square that shit away. I appreciate it. I was in Africa when Tommy died, and I was doing the embassy duty thing, and because he wasn't family, or there's only 5 Marines in the whole country, and you just can't bail on you know, 20% of the unit can't just take off because, in the Marine Corps' eyes, you know, a friend died. You know how they work. So I was I was very upset when Tommy died. I still miss him quite dearly. Now, haven't had any communication with my own mother or stepfather for decade minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So
one thing that we talk about in the podcast, and I think you're doing it whether you realize it or not, is legacy. Have you ever thought about legacy in your son?
Not overtly. I just want him to be, I mean, at the end of the day, I want him to have a relationship with me because I have none. When I look to my left of my biological family, I have zero. So I'm on my own 100%. My wife's got a great family. And they've taken me on fabulously, but I don't have anywhere, but I have my family is my wife and my son and her family, but blood, none, zero. And that's they did that. Now I always want my son, I guess, legacy wise, to have a home with me and know where I am, want to come see me, be excited to come see me, say, Dad, come see me. I mean, that would make me happier than anything. Because literally the last thing I would ever want him to do is meet my mother. Ever. Mm-hmm. She's too dangerous. She's too dangerous. She's too heavy.
Yeah.
For probably a 95 pounder.
I mean, statistically, you shouldn't even be here. So, I mean, like the fact that you're here is already a statistical oddity. So, like, I agree that it would be.
Yeah.
There's no upside.
No, I want him to be with me. I mean, I want him to go out and we want to push him out and say, go. Yeah, after high school, take off, man. Go for a year. You know, take off. Go be lost, man. You'll be fine. If you get in trouble, I'll get you. Don't worry. But I don't care what happens. I'm not going to judge you. You'll be fine. I'm just going to bring you back to safety zone and we'll fix whatever. But all of your 20s. I mean, I take Gary V's approach on it. I mean, you can blow it, man. You have so much time to
figure it out.
30, I mean, just go get it done. And like, I was never guided that way. Nobody ever said to me, you know, you can try to start a business or you can anything. I mean, it was basically 18. We were told that when you're 18, and we were still in high school. I mean, I was out already, but like from as far back as 14 or 13, it was clear. At 18 years old, you're either paying rent or you're on your own. I'm like, I mean, how can you say that to you're basically on notice. Get the hell out ASAP. Yeah. How could you say that? I want my son to go live, but I don't want to expedite it, at all. That's why, like what you're saying, your time in bed with your kids, and like my wife and I would rotate with him. Like one night, my wife will be in bed with him reading a book, and we used to read a lot of books together, but now he's an avid reader on his own. So when him and I are in, putting him in the bed, we're just shooting the breeze, talking about whatever topic of the day. Like last night, we're in his bedroom, and I got the laser pointer, and we're talking about Christmas. I'm like, we got the laser pointer across his bedroom. We're pointing. Think about going to Finland. We're pointing. Or next year, summer, we're gonna go. Maybe in Seattle, we're gonna go to the Badlands and then go down to Colorado. So we're mapping it out, and we're just shooting the breeze, planning and doing, getting excited about what's next,
And I think kids do this, I think, probably right up until 7 or 8. And I think then parents kind of break them of it. But kids dream naturally. And I think as parents, it's our obligation to make sure they keep dreaming, because that's really when you learn to settle. And that's really what makes a lot of Americans miserable today, is because at some point they stopped dreaming that anything was possible for their life. And they just settled with the deck of cards that they were handed from the dealer. And they never say like, okay, I'm folding, I'm going to retry this again. And when you went on your trip this summer, I was really inspired. And this is something I want to do with my kids, is just take them through life in different views. Like the one thing that you're giving them there, and it's probably very similar. I often say in the podcast is I want my kids to go to India and see someone smile with nothing. Because in 2019, that's a skill that a lot of people don't have, that they don't understand how someone can smile without an iPhone. And that's what your kids, Thailand's not necessarily the most, poverty is probably prevalent in lots of places. And there's probably lots of people in Thailand that are smiling and happy. That's what I remember about Asia is everybody's excited and happy and they've got nothing.
Pretty happy go lucky. Yeah.
And that's an important lesson for your own well-being. And you're giving that view to your son. When you travel the US, you're meeting different people. And the one that, if you could maybe just tell a little bit more, was when you were in Arizona and that flag was fallen.
Oh man. So I just gave my son a map. We left Vegas and I said, we need to go here, here, and here. And I just said, no interstates, just highways and country roads, all the way to Buena Vista, Colorado. So it was a long way. And I gave him a Rand McNally. He's never seen a Rand McNally. But he was a navigator, no technology at all. And he did an excellent job. But we were going through this place in Arizona, and we're just balling through it at 100 miles an hour, just on some highway in the middle of nowhere. And off to my right, I just see like really quick, like a whole bunch of flags, like America, like in the middle of the desert, like just middle of the desert, and a whole bunch of these flags. And I'm like, wow, you see that, Quiller? And my son's Quiller, and we just kept on driving. And then I know in the picture there was flags that had fallen down in my mind because there's hundreds of these flags. And I was like, oh man, I can't. It's like, turn the car around, drive back, and my son and I park, and it's a Navajo war memorial, war veterans graveyard. And somebody had taken the time to put an American flag on every single grave. And there were hundreds of graves all the way back to the Korean War, World War II. So we spent a good couple hours walking around this rattlesnake pit, fixing American flags and putting them back up and zip tying them and using baling wire. And throughout that whole
cord,
whatever we could find, like whatever we could find on the ground. A lot of baling wire by hand. We wanted a rental car. I don't have anything. And but the whole time, my son just kept asking questions. He's like, "Where's that? What is that? Like, this guy. Like, it might be a Navy chief from the Korean War or Vietnam or somebody. And what's a chief? And then I talk about a chief, Navy chief, not an Indian chief, but a Navy chief. And we're talking about that's what like an E6 or E7 and above. And these people are really honored by Americans in general, then deeper by the Navajo people who add huge value to our own country, even though they probably could kind of have a grudge against us. There's a lot of really
they have good reason not to serve in their country.
Yeah, a lot of amazing conversation about that we were able to experience just by taking that break and putting the flags back up as many as humanly possible.
Even the code talkers isn't something that a lot of people know about. That's one of the best kept secrets of World War II. And
we were able to kind of walk through all that. And him and I had the opportunity in my Marine Corps career to have a couple of Marine Corps balls where a code talker was there, like telling us his experience. So I was able to share that with my son at this graveyard. And I'm so glad we did that. It was a really, really important moment for him and I. And I'm super glad that I listened to the little voice in my head and said, stop, go back. And then it turned into something quite magical for the two of us. I'll never forget that, nor will I.
I would say if I were to extrapolate the legacy that you were creating and what that lesson taught him, what I hear from it is you taught him that everybody matters, even the people that aren't here today, and that those people have a story. And that legacy of service, just in that simple moment of, I think that will show up in his life as being the guy that helps someone that falls instantly without even hesitating.
It's so funny that you brought that up, man. Because we were like, the whole conversation that we were having was about, these are all my brothers and sisters. Like, and we just left Vegas a few days ago, went to this Marine Corps bar, and it's called Leatherneck Bar. And I walk in there and everybody knows me. I don't know them at all, but it's that common thread, where it's just, and my son's like, man, Dad, these guys talk to you like they know you. I said, I know, we kind of know each other, but we don't.
Yep.
And then fast forward several days later, and we're going through this graveyard, and I'm literally able to say, I don't know these people, but I know these people.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good trip.
I would love to follow up in 10 years, because I bet if you ask him when he's 20 and what he's doing, that moment has some influence on some portion of his view of where he fits into the world.
I hope.
And I think when I think of what as an obligation as a dad, you can mess up a lot of things, but as long as your kids have a very wide view of what's possible or the widest view of the American dream, I think that's one of the best gifts that we can give them. And that's what I love. When I was observing your road trip on Instagram, I was like, you're giving them a view of one, that a dad can do this for a month, that it is possible. It's not something that you just have to get stuck into an 8 to 5 belief that it's not possible.
Yeah.
That you can meet people, that you can talk to people and still have things in common. You didn't die because you talked to people, which is something that a lot of people think is going to happen, myself included 5 years ago. And like, these are just all small little deposits that when you travel with your kids outside of your normal life, that I think you're helping them figure out how they fit into the world, but you can't see that from inside their life. When you're living your regular routine or whatever you're doing, that's not teaching them who they are and how they fit in. But when you experience life and different people and just stopping at a Navajo code talkers, you have no idea how that story is going to impact them at such a young age. And like, that is helping him figure out more of those feelings, where he fits in. And that's the best gift you can give him, is because a lot of kids graduate and they have no idea what they're going to do. His 12 years of school isn't going to cut it, even if you have perfect grades. And you can't just go to school and go through the process, because then you're going to get the American dream of, oh, I graduated. Now I got debt. Now I got to get a house. Now I got to get married. Now I got to get kids. Little do you know, you turn 35 and you're like, I'm pretty much lost and I hate everything about my life. But if you do these things correctly, I think you can give them the gift of knowing how they fit into the world. Because I think that's what a lot of kids just failure to launch is they just have no exposure to how they fit in, and they feel lost and never accepted.
Good analysis, Ben. Makes sense.
Yeah, that was going through all my head when I was like, this kid is going to. I've described the legacy a couple times. As Steve Jobs talked about making a dent in the universe, and I would say he did. And I'm trying to relate it to that the universe is a wall, and as veterans, we have a big chance to make a big dent in that wall. And essentially, if you craft it right with your kids, you want someone to walk by this wall and say, that was the Boudah wall. That was the Boudah dent right there. He was here. And your son made it that much deeper because you gave him the tools of your life and your experiences. And think of you having the worst dad experience ever, you showing up as the best dad experience. Think how that's going to show up as his dad in the next life. Like, that dent's just going to keep getting deeper and deeper because you use the toolbox of your life to give him the best chance he had to go out there and do something with it.
Well, time will tell. Time will tell. We're trying our damnedest to do the right thing.
And that's all you can do is you put in the work, and things don't always play out. The kids will make their own choices at the end of the day. But I think this is what is special about military veteran dads is we just have a very special view of the world. And giving that gift to our kids can really help them do bigger things in the world and create that change that we really need in this world, because they've been given a toolbox that most people haven't.
Absolutely. And for us military dads, I think we're so used to working at a fast pace that maybe we suffer from lack of patience.
Yeah.
I think maybe every parent has a patience problem, but I think, especially with us military folk, that our patience we expect you to be here. Like, why aren't you here? Like, why don't you got this shit figured out yet? Like, because you're 5, you're not operating at a high visibility situation where your head's not on a swivel. You're distracted by the Pokemon. I mean, it's exercising that patience bone, and getting the right amount of sleep as a dad. And good sleep, like I recognized after a good hard talk with my wife well over a year ago, was that like my patience was thin, super thin, and everybody was kind of seeing it. And even though I would sleep, I think because I was drinking a little too much. I didn't drink until I joined the Marine Corps. Then I just drank all the time, like every day, have a couple of drinks, and then the weekends you party, and then the Marine Corps just party time, like big time. And then I never got into drugs, but I never got in trouble with drinking. I never got sick. I drank myself to puked plenty of times, but I mean, like I never like got in trouble, never got DUIs, and I just never got caught or whatever. But I just realized that I'd given it enough of my time. That was it. Like I just said, okay, I've given this enough of my time. And when I got over that hump, I just decided, like, done, like no more of that. And I immediately realized how much more time I had available, which opened up my relaxed. My patience was totally different. I literally was bored for a long time. What do I do with myself? Which turned into more time with my son, more crazy ass activities, more
adventures,
or whatever. Yeah, we go camping here. We do all kinds of weird things, but just stuff together, whatever it is. I don't care what it is. It's just we try to spend time. But instead, we used to go to pubs and watch a match or whatever. And those days are gone, man. Like they're just totally gone. And I'm so happy that somewhere along my line, I decided that's it. I gave it enough time. I gave booze enough time.
And you don't get any time back. So it's like every one you're trading for it, and you never really.
Yeah. Man, now I'm liking the desserts too much. I gotta cut off the fucking.
Well, I didn't notice. You were still looking pretty slender in your suit.
Good suit, man. That's a good thing about where I live. You get a good suit cut.
Yeah, I was thinking, I was like, the SOB has got a really nice suit, and I bet he didn't pay hardly anything for it.
Oh, no, they're expensive, but yeah, a lot less expensive here than they are there, I'd imagine. But yeah.
And I'm sure there's just better service. Like you really probably have to look to get a hand-tailored suit. I'm sure yours was hand-tailored, right?
Oh, yeah, they're everywhere.
Exactly. I don't even know where I would find a hand-tailored suit. The only place I can think of is the Men's Warehouse, and that's really not hand-tailored.
Yeah, you throw a stick at a guy in Sukhumvit, you'll get a suit maker.
Yeah. I get an interesting question. I haven't asked it in a while. When your son's 30 at a bar talking with your friends about you as a dad and describing you, what do you want him to say?
I want him to say.
Or what do you hope he says?
I hope he says that he loves me. I hope he says that he can't wait to see me next. I hope he says that I'm a good dad. I'm a friend. I'm a guide. I'm a mentor. I hope that's what he says. I mean, I'm there. That's what I hope he says, and I hope he feels. Without a doubt. I mean, literally when he was born, that was my commitment to him, was to, change all of that stuff.
Change the story forever.
Totally. Like that history is dead.
Blow up that family tree, and we're planting a brand new branch or new one right here.
Absolutely. And that's what I hope he takes away from me, for sure.
Well, I am convinced after this episode and following you for over a year that the Boudah dent is going to be pretty big, because this family tree is got some strong roots in failure as being a dad, and the branches that are growing are going to be super strong. And I can only imagine, as he goes out into the world to start his family, what he's able to do with the gifts that you gave him. It's going to be something special, I'm for sure.
Well, thank you. I hope so too. I appreciate it, man.
Greg, if you can wrap up your wisdom as a dad for being a dad for 9 years, what message do you want other dads to hear?
Be patient, be loving and kind, and play. Play a lot. Play a lot, because you don't realize how fast that time burns. I can't believe he's already 9. And the more time we play, either building robots out of Lego or whatever we're doing, he loves it. I mean, you'll love it too, but he'll love it 20 times more.
Yeah, entering their imagination. That's another secret hack. I spent most of the afternoon today playing Legos and building airplanes. And my kids actually had left to go into another room, and I was still there playing Legos. And my wife's like, "You're still such a kid," because the kids have left and I'm still there building an airplane. And I was like, I love building airplanes. I would do it. If we didn't have kids, I'd probably have a set of Legos. But you're right, that time doesn't come back. And I spent, my wife went to China for school, and I spent 10 days as a single dad. And I'm positive when I'm 50, that'll be the best 10 days I ever spent, because man, it almost gave me a hangover, because I really wanted more of that. And it goes by so fast, and you've got to be there. You got to be present. And we didn't talk about much, but in the early episodes, I always would talk about kids spell love, TIME. And at the end of the day, that's the only thing that matters, is they just want your time. just for today, it was raining. So our common thing is to go mall walking. We went to the mall, walked around with a bunch of senior citizens. They ride the rides. We get a pretzel. And that's literally they probably ask at least 100 times a year to go mall walking. Like in the summer, we go by the mall. Can we go mall walking? It is literally just walking around the mall. It's nothing super exciting, but gosh damn it, that they is the best. And it's so simple. I'm sure you find the same thing, that your son doesn't want something complicated. He just wants you to show up in their life. And no matter what you're feeling inside your head, you are always the hero every time you walk into your kid's life. And never forget that, because your inner voice can cancel that out. And all it takes is a good hug from your kids. Or maybe he says like, hey dad, you're my hero. And like, you're like,
oh man, I love it.
Well, Greg, I really appreciated this. Where people can find you if they want to connect more with the Jewelry Republic.
So my Instagram handle is the Jewelry Republic, and all of the Facebook and all that's all the Jewelry Republic. Now, if you want, my personal stuff is Ginger Whiskers. So if you wanted to follow my son and I, we're all over Ginger Whiskers on Instagram as well. So that's how you can get a hold of me. And I'm way available to talk to any dad if they have any questions about, maybe traveling overseas. I'm an expert at it. So if any one of your parents that you're talking, any one of the dads you've got who want to travel overseas, a lot of fear, like, oh my God, I got to get shots. Are they going to get sick or whatever, man? Hospitals abroad are so much better than hospitals in America. Like, it's totally different. Like, you can break your leg and go get it fixed for $300 in first class hospital.
Yeah. Really, the hardest thing is just getting over the jet lag. Once you get over that, it's all up.
Yeah, it's awesome. Actually, it's pretty good.
And I am a big plane nerd, and I always look up at the sky. And I have an app on my phone that can literally tell me where every airplane's going. And I think it's the idea of an airplane, of the freedom and the choice that it gives you. And I love international travel. Even a trip to Australia that's 17 hours, like that is like trip. that trip and that. Just that feeling of going somewhere that's unknown, like that is an addicting feeling. That the Marine Corps gave me that feeling because it sent me to Okinawa, and nobody in my life or nobody in my family owned a passport prior to that. So I have something that nobody else in my family has, of seeing perspective and being addicted to traveling on a plane for 13 hours.
Well, get your guys over here and I'll help you get sorted for a week in Thailand. You'll leave with a nice suit.
I'll probably do 2 weeks though. And actually my perfect dream is to turn the business of the podcast into a business. But my wife's a teacher, so she's always going to be a teacher. But I would absolutely love to vacation for those 2 months out of the year during the summer and just leave home. That I work for 10 months out of the year in the podcast still keeps publishing while I'm traveling. But for those 2 months, I'm just dad, and we don't come back for those 2 months until it's time to go back to school. That's
a great idea, man. There's a lot of good digital nomads in this part of the world.
Yeah.
A lot of them. Yeah. And a lot of them, one of them is a teacher usually. And the teachers here get paid pretty well at the international schools.
Mm-hmm. Just got to keep widening my view of the American dream.
Yeah.
And being friends with you, it's pretty easy to expand it.
Well, I'm coming out to your neck of the woods here sooner or later because I need to talk to Navy Paddles and come see you. Well, if I'm in that part of the woods, I'll come over to you.
Well, Navy Paddles, you got to fly almost up to Minneapolis, though, because they're up in...
To me, that's like this. I mean, that's not a big deal.
True, but I'm at the southern border of Wisconsin. They're at the northern border.
That 45-minute flight, right?
Yeah, so either if you do O'Hare, I'm like 2 hours, but if you do Minneapolis, you're probably like 45 minutes from Navy Paddles. So depends which airline your preference to. Maybe Minneapolis would be a little bit easier to get to.
I'm cheap, man. I'm cheap. Whoever's flying the cheapest, most direct route in economy is how I roll. I'm loyal to no airline.
Loyal to no airline. I'm loyal to some that, but at the end of the day, I go wherever the money goes. And being a plane nerd, I am not aware of. I don't think there is a direct flight from even Los Angeles to Bangkok, is there?
There used to be. Bangkok Airways used to fly direct.
And I'm thinking you mostly have to connect in Japan, right?
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of little.
Japan or maybe China for one random one, or Incheon.
But I took a flight once from Bangkok all the way over the top of the world into LaGuardia, right into New York. One shot, one flight. And I got off the plane. The plane left the same day when you leave here, you arrive in the same day over on your side of the world. And I landed at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't check into my hotel for this thing I was doing in New York. And so I was like, damn, I had like 5 hours to kill. But I was feeling pretty good. And I'm walking around Central Park, and there had been people that lined up for days, like on this, like, there's not some main, I don't know New York very well, like some main avenue, fancy avenue in New York. And I just like walked up to it. People were like lined up for the Pope was in town. And he drove by, and Pope Benedict, he cruised down on his little Pope mobile. And there's like basically a bunch of Hispanic people who like, you know, are huge, the last salvage for the Christian faith or the Catholic faith. Like they're all like fan. I'm like, oh, hey, joke, right from like me to the computer screen. He's like, hey, the Pope come by. I'm like, yeah, what a good morning. Morning, Pope. Then I jumped with the helicopter. It was a crazy experience. But that was that was kind of a funny selfie.
Well, Greg, I really appreciate this, and I can't wait to see what you and your son are up to next year. And I'm even more excited to see changing the world that the Boudahs go out there and do.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your podcast, and I love what you're doing with the military veteran dad. It's so cool.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. And thank you for listening to today's show, and I really hope you enjoyed it. The lifeblood of any new podcast are the reviews. If you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on iTunes, I would really appreciate it, and you will help us get the message out to even more military veteran dads. As John Maxwell says, if there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. Dads, it's time to come home.